I never imagined my poverty would lead to this moment. I am my father's lawyer. Then tears fell. The courtroom felt like a suffocating cage, the air heavy with tension. I stood there, heart racing, pulse like a drum, staring straight at the judge. I could feel the cold gavel vibrating through the air, an ominous whisper echoing through my mind. This was my life. 1 minute, I was just a kid from a broken home, struggling for scraps. The next, I was thrust into a battle I never wanted. The crowd was a blur. Faces twisted in judgment, whispers crackling like static. I could hear the murmurs. Why is he even here? Does he really think he can win? It hit me like a punch to the gut. Doubt tore at my insides, but I forced my chin up. I needed to keep going, for Dad. My hands trembled, slick with sweat, but there was no turning back now. Dad had been my rock, a gentle giant with calloused hands and a heart full of love. Now, he was fighting against a faceless corporate monster. I could still hear his laugh, his stories that painted our tiny apartment with warmth. "You can do anything you set your mind to," he'd say. Those words screamed in my head. But everything changed on that fateful day. The day I found him sitting in the dark, head in his hands, tears streaming down his weathered face. "They're taking everything from us," he whispered. The walls of our home echoed his despair. That was the moment I decided to fight, not just for him, but for us. I dove into law books at the community center, pages worn and scribbled with chaotic notes. Every late night and stolen moment became a piece of a puzzle I was desperate to solve. But standing in front of the judge, doubts clawed at me. What if I couldn't do this? What if I failed him? The other side launched their attack, sharp words like knives. I braced myself, adrenaline coursing through me, but suddenly everything blurred. The weight of realization crashed over me. His wasn't just about money or legalities. This was about our lives, our dreams, and my father's dignity. I pulled in a breath, steadying the storm inside me. Then I looked toward my father, sitting in the back, his eyes wide with hope and fear. Seeing him combusted a quiet rage within me. I could feel the heat rising, igniting the nervous energy around me. As I opened my mouth, silence fell. The world paused. I had to speak, but what came out was a trembling whisper. "Your Honor," but the words didn't matter. What mattered was the fight behind them, the fire I hoped would ignite in the room. Everything hinged on that moment. What if I failed? What if these walls, which had held all my hopes, crumbled to dust? Then the unexpected happened. A figure rose from the crowd, a woman in a sharp suit, a stranger, but her eyes were locked on me. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear her words, but something about her presence felt vital, like a lifeline tossed in the storm. Who was she? As she spoke, I swayed between hope and confusion. Was she friend or foe? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the woman concluded her hushed words, a ripple of curiosity swept through the courtroom. Her intense gaze was unwavering, and in that moment, the harsh reality of the room began to fade away, replaced by a burgeoning glimmer of hope. I could feel my father's eyes on me, desperately searching for a sign that I was still in this fight. For a fleeting second, I clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, this stranger held the key to our salvation. The judge's voice cut through the air, commanding attention, and snatched me back to the harshness of my surroundings. I scanned the room, looking for any sign of encouragement. The whispering crowd and the imposing lawyer from the corporation felt like silent giants ready to crush me. And yet, the woman remained resolute, her presence a beacon in this storm. Your Honor, she spoke, her voice firm yet inviting, I would like to speak on behalf of the defendant's family. I believe there are factors here that merit consideration. My heart raced as I realized she was advocating for us, stepping into the fray with a courage I had only begun to summon, but as she advanced her argument, I felt a pang deep within. How many times had I wished for a figure like her to walk into our lives and alter our fate? The comforting thought was tainted by a heavy dread, knowing that this moment, while imbued with promise, was crammed with uncertainty. Her words wove a thread of empathy into the hardened fabric of the courtroom, illuminating the plight of families like mine. She painted the picture of the personal cost behind the legal battle show corporate giants often plowed through lives without a second thought. I clutched my stomach as memories of nights spent fearing eviction washed over me, and I could only hope this woman was enough to shield us from that fate. As her speech drew to a close, applause rippled through the courtroom, a sound I had never expected to hear. It felt surreal, almost impossible. Were they responding to her or were they trying to convince themselves of our worth? I held my breath, waiting for the judge to respond, but he merely adjusted his glasses and returned to his papers, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on the room. With a faint sigh, the woman stepped back, her determined expression softened slightly, as if she understood the harsh reality of our situation. I wanted to run to her and thank her, but my focus shifted back to my father. He was nodding slowly, his entire being wrapped in this fragile balance of hope and despair. I realized then that my fight for our lives carried the weight of his every disappointment. Just before the gavel came crashing down, I caught the woman's eyes once more. There was something in them that was unwavering, as if she carried stories of struggles etched in her soul, stories that would ignite resilience in even the most weary of hearts. But as the judge leaned forward, ready to deliver a verdict, she cast her gaze away, the brief connection slipping through my fingers. My voice broke through the silence, stronger this time. Your Honor, if I may, I declared, my heart pounding with the urgency of a million unsaid words. It was no longer just about the case, it was about showing my father and myself that we were more than just our circumstances. I had to let them see the truth of our reality. This courtroom was a reflection of every late-night argument over bills, every tear shed in the dark when the world felt too heavy, and every moment when we chose to fight back against the tide. As the attention shifted back to me, just as I began to speak, the heavy doors of the courtroom suddenly swung open, and in walked a familiar figure, the man who had always been my biggest supporter, my childhood best friend, Ben. My breath hitched. What was he doing here? The look on his face told me something was wrong. I'm sorry I'm late. You won't believe what just happened, he half shouted. The room fell silent, tension crackling like electricity. The judge's expression darkened, and my heart raced, fear clawing its way back to the surface at the thought that this moment could disrupt everything. I wanted to scream for him to be quiet, to preserve this fragile chance we had, but there was a strength in his urgency. Ben, no. I cried, unsure of what was about to unfold. But he took a deep breath, lifted his chin, and began to speak, his words weaving into the air a new layer of uncertainty and dread. Suddenly, with one revelation, he could turn this whole case upside down, shatter the fragile optimism that had just been built, and leave us reeling in the aftermath. What would he reveal? Would it lay bare our darkest secrets in front of everyone? As I turned to face him, bracing for his words, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The room held its breath, the silence amplifying every heartbeat as I turned to my childhood friend. Ben's expression flickered between concern and determination, and I could only hope he wouldn't say something that would plunge our fragile existence into chaos. Laura, he began, his voice steadying as he looked directly into my eyes, I didn't want to come here bearing bad news, but he hesitated, glancing around the courtroom, where the glares of the seated jurors seemed to bore into his back. But I found something that changes everything. A murmur rippled through the packed chamber, the tension weaving itself like a noose. My fingers, trembling at my sides, clenched into tight fists. What do you mean? I managed to ask, my voice a thin whisper, trepidation creeping into my chest. The evidence you thought was buried, it's not, he continued, drawing a breath that shook ever so slightly. The company didn't just cut corners, they faked documents related to the environmental compliance checks. They lied because of the lawsuit against them. With those words, a collective gasp echoed through the room, the air thick with realization. For a moment, I felt suspended between disbelief and the sliver of hope that dared to flicker at the edge of my consciousness. My father leaned forward, eyes wide like saucers, his disbelief morphing into a cautious glimmer of enthusiasm. But even as our eyes met, I felt the crushing weight of fear. What would this revelation cost us? They've been manipulating the truth all along, Ben said, his tone rising, emboldened by the spark that ignited in me. If you can get a hold of the right proof, we can fight back, Laura. We can shove their lies right back in their faces. But the tumult in my heart wasn't just excitement, it was laced with dread of what would follow. Could we really expose such powerful forces? I imagined them rising up against us, determined to crush us into submission once more. For every moment of hope Ben offered, a corresponding weight of anxious despair settled in the pit of my stomach. Does this mean you mean we can win? My voice trembled as I attempted to grasp the magnitude of what he was saying. With Ben's revelations, the idea of attending court recited not just the tale of our suffering but also the pathway to reclaim some semblance of control. Before he could answer, a slam interrupted. USA fist pounding on the judge's desk sent our breaths catching in our throats. Enough! Barked the judge, annoyance flashing across his features. This court is not a stage for dramatics. You will present evidence in due course, but I will not allow this frivolity. As his gavel struck, an unsettling hush shrouded the courtroom once more. I could feel the tension surging like an electrical current, uncertain of whether to foster hope or cower back into the shadows of despair. Your Honor, I object, I heard myself say, surprising everyone, myself included. This is not frivolous. This is about lives and the choices made by these corporate giants that led to suffering for families like mine. My heart raced, each word imbued with the firmness of my resolve. With each pulse, the image of my father living under the ever-present specter of poverty steadied my voice. The judge looked down, defiance tinging his expression. Speak accordingly, he said, but I felt the undercurrent of changing tides beneath the brusque exterior of the courtroom. I sensed that something pivotal was shifting. Laura, he's right, Ben murmured, urgency sparking in his tone. If we can find tangible proof to tie their deception to your family's situation, documents, emails, anything, we can build a case. We can turn this around. Hope surged again, this time more powerful, propelling me forward. But where do we even start? I asked, anxiety curling at my edges, threatening to eclipse the hope I was clinging to. Back at my place, he said quickly, I've been digging through some comments on the corporate forums. Get this, people knew. Conversations about how to spin the liabilities, evade accountability. There's a digital footprint left behind. We can gather this up and take it to someone who can help. Just as I felt that promise of action inflating the air around me, the stark reality of our situation crept back. What if they find out? What if they come after you? I murmured, my voice shaking at the thought, fear leaping into my throat like a wild beast. Ben's gaze softened, yet there was defiance in his stance. Then they will have to deal with both of us. This has never just been your fight. You're not alone in this. But doubt threaded through the excitement settling on my shoulders, twisting around my heart like a vice. I wrestled with the heavy implications of his promise. It wasn't just about the courtroom anymore, it was about our lives forever altered by decisions made without our consent. We were on the precipice of something massive, a turning point filled with risks and uncertainties that could drown us even as it offered hope. Let's just survive this trial first, I whispered, casting a fraught glance back to my father before shifting again to look at Ben, unsure how onto this precarious ledge we were teetering. As the trial wore on, the stakes mounted, pressing down on me like a lead weight as Ben revealed more pieces of this perilous puzzle. No longer merely defined by the fate written for me, I sensed a storm on the horizon, one that carried the potential to uplift or destroy everything I held dear. And as the judge's hammer struck once more, I knew the time was coming. We were edging toward a revelation, a reckoning that could alter my family's path forever. The question loomed over us all, at what cost would our fight for truth come? Just as I began to think we were ready, Ben's phone vibrated in his pocket, and the look on his face turned grave. "We have to go," he whispered urgently, glancing back at the behemoth of the corporate lawyers smirking behind us. That I hesitated, questions brewing like a tempest in my chest. What had he seen? What would happen next? In that fleeting moment, when the weight of uncertainty felt almost unbearable, I closed my eyes and braced myself, wondering how much longer we could keep running before the storm would finally catch up to us. The courtroom felt like a sprawling maze, its walls closing in with each passing second. I could hardly breathe as I tried to piece together the urgency simmering in Ben's expression. My heart raced, anticipating the unspeakable news he was about to share. I knew it was far more than just another revelation. It was our lives hanging in the balance, teetering on the edge of despair and flickering hope. "Laura," he said, his voice almost a whisper, "I just got a message from someone who has been tracking this case. They say they have proof that the company has been covering up multiple incidents like ours. They want to meet, but it's urgent." The weight of the information settled heavily within me. I felt my stomach twist into a knot as anxious thoughts spiraled through my mind. Meet? Where? Who? I stammered, the questions tumbling out as dread coiled tighter around my heart. "Downtown, not far from here," Ben replied, glancing nervously toward the exit of the courtroom. "Someone on the inside who's on our side. They're willing to testify but wants to keep their identity hidden for now." With his words, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. This was a chance to challenge the beast that had loomed over my family for far too long. A tide of adrenaline surged as I clutched Ben's arm for support, but a wave of fear quickly washed over me. "What if this is a trap, Ben? We can't afford to take risks." "Not now." He turned to me, urgency swirling in his eyes. "We can't ignore this, Laura. This could change everything. We have to go. Now." Before I could respond, my father's voice cut through the tumult in my mind. "Laura, what's happening?" His brow furrowed with worry as he caught sight of our tense exchange. I weighed my options, vividly aware that every second we hesitated could propel us closer to the edge of disaster. "Dad, it's a lead," I stuttered, glancing at Ben, searching for reassurance. "We need to check it out." It was a proclamation laden with weight, my fear momentarily overshadowed by the prospect of finally seizing our fate. My father shook his head, his eyes reflecting the storm of emotions colliding within him. "You can't just walk into danger. What if this person isn't really on your side? What if they bring you down even further?" I took a step closer to him, desperately trying to convey the gravity of our situation. "We're fighting for us, Dad. This isn't just about the trial, it's about everything this company has taken from us. It's about reclaiming our lives." His gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, I saw that familiar spark of pride. "I understand, but you need to think about the consequences of every decision you make. We can't afford to lose any more than we already have." Ben placed his hand on my shoulder, grounding me as the tension weighed heavily like a dark cloud overhead. "Your dad's right. But what's lost if we never fight back? What if this is the only chance we get?" He looked between us, imploring my father with silent understanding that I felt torn between wanting to shield my father from worry and longing for the chance to take destiny into my own hands. In that crucible of uncertainty, realization dawned: the fight wasn't only mine anymore. It was ours, a familial rebellion against forces that sought to cripple us. "I'll be careful, I promise." After a long pause, my father finally nodded, a reluctant acceptance resting upon him. "Just be cautious." Always, with the weight of his concern mingling with my resolve, I turned toward Ben. "Let's go." Outside the courthouse, the world was alive with vibrancy, a stark contrast to the sterile atmosphere we had just left behind. My heart raced with each step as we walked briskly, feeling as though we were running toward both the future and a precipice. The streets buzzed with people, each another reminder of lives being lived unburdened by our struggles. "Are you sure about this?" Ben asked quietly, his breath visible in the chill of the evening air. "No," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But we can't back down now." The cafe where we were scheduled to meet felt unsettlingly ordinary, a warm light spilling from its windows and soft chatter filtering out to the street like a siren's plea. The incongruity of the situation weighed heavily upon me as we stepped inside, scanning the crowded room for anyone who looked like they had something to hide. That we were minutes early, and I felt every tick of the clock winding down with palpable tension in the room. Anxiety danced in the pit of my stomach, a relentless reminder of what was at stake. What if they don't show? I murmured, glancing at Ben, who was focused on the door as if willing the stranger to appear, but just as I began to question our decision, the bell above the door chimed, an unexpected sound like a starter's pistol. A figure entered, hooded and carrying a worn satchel, scanning the room until their eyes settled on us. I suddenly felt the flood of unease wash over me, strikingly aware of their anonymity, how unknown they were compared to the collective weight of our quest. Laura. Ben? They called, their voice equally cautious yet laced with distinct urgency. "I'm glad you came." My heart pounded as I met their gaze, and in that moment, dread mingled with the simmering possibility of finally clawing back our narrative. The stranger gestured for us to follow, leading us to a booth in the dimly lit corner that promised an air of secrecy. As we settled into our seats, I felt the air shift, the hum of hope and dread intermingling with the scent of coffee and pastries. "I have something you need to see," they said, leaning in closely, eyes darting around as though fear of discovery loomed just around the corner. "What is it?" I pressed, eager yet apprehensive, my heart pounding furiously against my ribcage. The stranger opened the satchel, pulling out a stack of documents, each emblazoned with the insignia of the corporation that had sought to erase us. My eyes widened in horror as unease swelled within me, connected to memories of hurt, betrayal, and loss. Could all of this be true? Proof of their cover-ups, ties to your father's struggle. "It's all in here," they said, sliding the documents across the table with a phenomenon of suspense. As I reached out to grasp the papers, something in the air shifted, like the arrival of an inevitable storm. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, and my heart dropped as I saw the name flash across the screen. Dad. I froze, the revelations in front of me slipping away as I picked up the call, dread racing through my veins. "Dad, but before I could speak, a terrible crackle of static interrupted, and then silence enveloped me like a suffocating shroud. My heart sank, filled with an eternal weight, sudden terror threading its way through every vein. The stranger watched me, their eyes wide, filled with concern. "Laura? Are you okay?" Ben asked, his voice laced with fear, but I could hardly process it. The only thought consuming me was the ominous presence of unanswered questions that now loomed before us. I couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that had settled deep in my chest. What had happened to my father? What did this mean for us? The documents still lay there tantalizingly, heavy with promise and burden alike. But as I stared into the abyss of uncertainty, I knew this was merely the beginning. And it would take everything within me to shield the light of hope from fading away completely, even as darkness threatened to swallow us whole. The cafe felt like a cocoon, muffling the chaos outside, but inside, a storm brewed just beneath the surface. I clutched the papers tighter, their weight a tangible reminder of everything at stake. My father's call lingered in the air, echoing with an urgency I couldn't ignore. "What's wrong?" Ben asked, concern knitting his brows together. I swallowed hard, emotions clawing their way up my throat. "I don't know." My voice faltered as the dread seeped deeper. What if something happened to Dad? What if this meeting, this moment, was a distraction, a way to lure us away from him? The stranger leaned in, their expression shifting to one of empathy mixed with conviction. "I understand how you feel, but you must focus. These documents could be your gateway to exposing everything. Your father would want you to move forward." It was hard to breathe as despair battled with what little hope remained. "How do you know my father? Please, who are you?" I demanded, needing to grasp a thread of certainty in this whirlwind. The stranger hesitated, glancing back at the door before whispering, "I can't reveal too much, but I've worked on the inside. I know how these companies operate, they can be ruthless. Your father stood up when no one else would. He needs you now more than ever." Ben placed his hand gently over mine, grounding me. Perhaps we can rescue him once we have this proof. We can't lose sight of why we're here. I nodded, trying to reconcile the clashing emotions swirling in my mind. I wanted so desperately to believe that things could shift in our favor. Okay. Okay, I murmured, resolving to dig deep for strength. Let's get started. With a tentative breath, I examined the stack of documents. Photos, contracts, emails, evidence of corruption and negligence daubed before me in stark contrast to the lives they had shattered. Every detail fueled my resolve, a fire sprang to life in my gut. This could change everything, I breathed, as a wave of determination washed over me, but just as I began to absorb the information, a violent crack reverberated outside. A loud commotion burst into the cafe. The door swung open forcefully, and my gaze darted toward it. A group of men in dark suits entered, scanning the room like hawks on the prowl. Panic surged through my veins like poison. "Ben, we need to." Before I could finish, the strangers locked eyes with us. One of them, a tall figure with a piercing gaze, lifted a finger, signaling to the other men behind him. The tension escalated, a charged silence enveloping our table. "Laura, we should go now," Ben urged, gripping my arm tightly. No. I countered, the inkling of defiance rising once more. This couldn't end like this. They couldn't take our momentum. We're here, fighting back. We can't let fear dictate our decisions. The stranger's eyes hardened, steel resolve surfacing. "Trust me, they're not here for an innocent chat. We need to leave now." As if propelled by an unseen force, I stood up, my heart racing faster than my thoughts could keep up. Yet as we turned to escape, the lead figure gestured, and one of his associates took a quick step forward, blocking our path. "Laura Whitmore," he said, a knowing smirk settling on his lips. "I wouldn't dare think of leaving so soon. We have so much to discuss." My stomach dropped. The pit of darkness that seemed to follow me unfurling tenderly became a chasm threatening to swallow me whole. Each word bore heavy connotations, and the finality in his tone chilled me to the bone. "Stand back," Ben urged, his protective instincts kicking in as he took a step forward, but I felt my heart ignite, a spark of resilience burgeoning within me. No more running. The words spilled from my lips before I could hesitate, and I felt a fierce need to reclaim my agency, even if my voice trembled with uncertainty. The man smirked, clearly not used to being confronted. "Brave or foolish, it matters little. But know this: your father was a thorn for our operations. And you, dear girl, are simply a continuation of the fierce bloodline. This isn't just your battle anymore. It's now a warning from us to you. My breath caught in my throat, and the world spun in and out of focus. I hadn't merely stepped into a confrontation, I was standing at the precipice of a fight for survival, not just for me, but for my father too. "What have you done to him?" I growled, fists clenched at my sides. The man's gaze intensified, the room plunging into an unbearable silence. "Such fire, yet it blinds you. The truth is not what you think. If you want to find out what has truly happened to him, you need to comply." I felt the weight of those words settle across my chest like an anchor, dragging me deeper into unknown depths. The choice was stark and sharp, lurking just beyond my reach. A sacrifice loomed, with both my father's fate and our fight in the balance. As I shifted, caught somewhere between surrender and defiance, that flicker of hope fought against the dark tide, and I knew, even in this storm, I couldn't let the flame extinguish. "Laura," Ben's voice cut through the turmoil, drawing my focus back to him. "We can still fight." At that moment, I understood what was truly at stake, a gripping truth that cut through the confusion. "Find my father," I declared, raw determination surging in my veins. "I won't stop until I know." Another wave of uncertainty crashed upon us, but with it lay the burning ember of resolution, igniting a spark in the pit of my stomach. We were entangled in a battle larger than ourselves, and I finally embraced the weight of that truth. Just as I made my choice, a deafening sound erupted from outside, a blaring siren, rending the air, diverting attention from the brewing confrontation within. The moment fractured, and before we could comprehend the chaos unraveling, the man stepped back, a flicker of caution replacing arrogance in his eyes. "Consider this a warning, Laura. The clock is ticking," he warned, his voice slicing through the din, before swiftly retreating with his associates, leaving the heavy burden of their ultimatum hanging in the air. Ben and I exchanged a breathless glance, the implications of their words surging through us. "What now?" he asked, the gravity of the situation grounding him. My chest tightened, but within, the fire that had been kindled surged upward, filling me with fierce resolve. "We prepare for what's coming. There must be a way to get to Dad. I will not lose him." As we stepped into the uncertain future, I gripped the papers tightly, holding on to the sliver of light they offered amidst the swirling darkness. I would find my father. And in doing so, I would discover the depths of my own strength, a journey that intertwined our fates in a way I had never imagined. The battle had only just begun. The evening air was thick with tension as Ben and I navigated the chaotic streets, the sirens fading into the distance. My heart raced, not just from the confrontation but from the stark realization that I was now at the mercy of shadows far more powerful than I had ever known. Somehow, the knowledge that my father's life hung in the balance tightened my resolve, propelling me forward even as the weight of uncertainty threatened to crush me. "Laura, we need to find a safe place to regroup," Ben urged, glancing around as if the very walls might be eavesdropping on our conversation. Each footstep echoed with urgency, and I could feel the embers of panic flaring in my chest with each passing moment. I nodded, trying to push down the fear gnawing at my insides. "There has to be someone who can help us, someone who understands this world. We can't just play their game, we need allies." As we slipped into a narrow alleyway, the sounds of the city dulled, replaced with an eerie silence that felt suffocating. Suddenly, the weight of our choices crashed over me. I barely registered the grimy walls surrounding us, my focus entirely consumed by one thought: my father. What if they real-life hurt him? I whispered, the doubt creeping back in like an unwelcome specter. Ben hesitated before answering, his voice gentle. "We can't lose hope, Laura. Your father fought for what was right, we can do the same." Even as he spoke, I felt the urgency rising within me, anew, a current of purpose that surged alongside the tide of fear. "I'm not just going to wait and hope. We need to be proactive. I need to get my father's contacts, anyone who can help." "Do you still have the keys to his office?" he asked, and the question struck me like a jolt of electricity. "Yes." The realization struck, dawning with a hint of hope. "If we can get there, I can access his files. He kept documents related to his cases, maybe something that could help us track down where they might have taken him." "Then we need to move quickly," Ben urged, urgency shifting the air around us. "If someone is looking for you, it won't be long before they figure out where you've gone." As we emerged from the alley, the dusk settled in, casting long shadows that danced like the creeping fears in my mind. But there was no room for hesitation. I felt a deep-rooted resolve forming a shield against that despair. "Let's go," I said firmly, and we hurried down the street, hearts pounding and eyes peeled for any sign of danger. When we reached my father's building, the familiar facade felt surreal against the backdrop of the tumultuous storm that roiled inside me. With shaking hands, I fished out the keys from my pocket, the cold metal glinting in the dim light. "This feels too easy," I muttered, glancing over my shoulder to ensure no one followed us. With a click, the door swung open, the musty air greeting us like an unwelcome ghost. The office was dimly lit, scattered papers creating an unkempt landscape that spoke of urgency, the same urgency that echoed in my heart. I skimmed the desks, searching for the files that could hold answers, while Ben stood alert by the door, a watchful sentinel, flipping through papers. Each name and case felt like a thread I could pull, tying back into the vast web that had ensnared my father. "This one," I breathed, finding a file related to his recent cases against the company that had so ruthlessly bullied him. The name of a contact leaped off the page, someone who had been in the midst of similar struggles but had vanished after a scuffle with the same people we were now up against. "Laura, we should hurry," Ben urged again, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. "Just give me a second," I pleaded, the weight of urgency clashing with the need to uncover as much as I could. I quickly jotted down the contact's name, flipping through the last of the files until I stumbled upon a photograph that nearly made me catch my breath. It was a picture of a secluded place far from the city, a hidden cabin my father had used for private meetings. This could be it, I murmured, the hope that had begun to flicker rising anew. This could lead us to him. Laura, we need to, Ben began, but before he could finish, an ominous creaking sound echoed through the office, freezing us in place. I looked up sharply, heart in my throat. Had we been discovered? Suddenly, the door burst open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim light. My breath hitched as recognition struck like a lightning bolt. One of the men from the cafe stepped inside, flanked by two others. I thought we were going to have a quiet chat, but it seems you've grown more resourceful, he sneered, eyes glinting with cruel amusement. Laura, run! Ben shouted, but before I'd even processed his words, they lunged forward. Instinct kicked in as I grabbed the files, clutching them against me like a shield. Back off! I cried, my voice tinged with defiance even in the face of impending danger. The man laughed, an unsettling sound that echoed through the office. Did you really think you could escape? Your father's fate is sealed, and now yours hangs in the balance. Fury ignited within me, battling against the terror that threatened to consume my rational mind. You won't take me! I screamed, adrenaline surging as I darted toward the window, praying for an exit. Ben, glowing with protective urgency, pushed me aside. Laura, out the back! He insisted, gripping my wrist tightly and pulling me toward a side door. We burst into the night, uncertainty chasing us like a predator, and I felt the weight of the world pressing down harder than ever. The path before us was fraught with danger and darkness, but deep inside, a flicker of defiance burned bright. It was time to unearth the truth about my father and reclaim our life. But as we raced into the shadows, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that the worst was yet to come. I was my father's daughter, and I could either buckle under the burdensome weight of that legacy or wield it as my weapon in this treacherous battle. In the night's embrace, I took a deep breath, igniting the fire within. But just as we rounded a corner, a thought struck me, freezing me in place. What if they had already laid their hands on my father and we were racing toward a trap of our own making? The chill of fear swept through me, and I turned to Ben, my heart pounding as painfully as the question lodged in my throat. What if we are too late? The words hung in the air, a shattering echo in the silence that enveloped us. The reality of the situation crashed down upon me like a wave, leaving me gasping for breath. What if we're too late? I repeated, my voice trembling as the fear threatened to overtake me. Ben paused, his grip on my arm tightening, eyes scanning the darkness around us. We can't think like that, Laura, he urged, his voice steady even as my heart raced. There's still a chance. We just need to keep moving. Your father wouldn't give up on you, and neither can we. I forced myself to breathe deeply, letting his words anchor me, but the gnawing dread that clung to the edges of my mind wouldn't relent. But what if we're running towards a trap? What if he's... My voice faltered, the thought too horrific to finish. Well, find him together. Just trust me, Ben said, determination etching his features into a mask of resolve. If anyone can figure this out, it's you. You're fierce. You're your father's daughter. The mention of my father's strength rekindled a flicker of hope within me, a warmth against the chill of fear. I nodded, forcing a half-hearted smile as we took off again, not knowing where the path would lead us but unwilling to stand idle in despair. As we sprinted through the streets, the adrenaline coursing through my veins began to numb the edges of my anxiety. Each corner we turned felt like a step away from danger, but the shadows of doubt still loomed heavily above me. The more we moved, the more the uncertainty nestled into my core. Were we merely fleeing from one danger, only to run headlong into another hell? Just when I thought we could escape, we found ourselves at a crossroads. Blocked on one side by towering walls adorned with graffiti, on the other by a darkened park. Where now? I huffed, feeling the weight of every heartbeat pulsing against my temples. Just a few moments to gather our thoughts, Ben said, his calm exterior offering a small measure of comfort. He scanned the area around us, and for a fleeting second, I contemplated the world we were in, known that blurred the lines between right and wrong, one that demanded we fight back with everything we had. In that moment of stillness, I caught the glimmer of light from a nearby lamppost illuminating a small park bench. Let's take a moment, I suggested, the exhaustion catching up to me. I needed to find clarity, to reshape the fear that threatened down into a strategy. As we settled onto the bench, Ben leaned closer, his brow furrowed. What's our next move? I opened the folder I'd grabbed from my father's office, pages crinkling under my fingertips as I referenced the names and addresses I'd written down. This contact, they might be able to. Before I could finish, a figure appeared in the flickering light, stepping cautiously towards us. It was an older man, his face worn but kind, eyes flickering with recognition as he glanced between Ben and me. Laura? Is that you? He asked, his voice carrying an air of familiarity. Mr. Davidson? I gasped, memories flooding in. A faint smile cracked his weathered face, but the urgency in his voice was unmistakable. I've been looking for you. We don't have much time. Looking for me? Why? The confusion must have etched itself onto my face. His gaze darted around us, checking shadows for danger. Your father's in more danger than you can imagine. We need to move quickly. The air thickened around us, laden with unspoken truths. My heart raced again, this time from the urgency of the man's words. What do you know? I urged him, rising from the bench, my resolve hardening even as fear coiled tighter in my gut. Follow me, he said, turning swiftly on his heel. I have a safe place nearby where we can talk. Ben looked at me, uncertainty mirroring my own. Can we trust him? He whispered. I nodded, feeling the weight of my father's legacy upon my shoulders. Mr. Davidson might be our only Chancean ally in a world drowning in shadows. Please, let's go. As we trailed behind him, following the path illuminated by hope yet shadowed by fear, I couldn't shake the premonition that we were teetering on the edge of something greater than we imagined. The air felt heavy with possibilities, each step bringing us closer to answers that could shatter everything I had ever known. Just as we reached the alley, a sudden crash echoed from the other end. The air froze, heavy with tension once more. Run! Mr. Davidson yelled, urgency pushing us forward, but as we zigzagged down the narrow passage, my heart sank. Something twisted inside me, a gut instinct warning that we were not alone, that our pursuers had followed, weaving the threads of danger tighter around us. The dark silhouette of a man loomed at the entrance, and just like that, my heart stuttered in panic. In that moment, I realized the truth I had feared: we were caught in an elaborate game of cat and mouse, and the stakes were higher than I could comprehend. And as Ben turned to me, determination etched on his features, my breath caught in my throat. We had opened a door, but this journey was going to demand everything from user resolve, our courage, our very lives. And as I glanced back, the sight of the approaching shadows sent shivers through me. Little did I know, the revelations about my father's life and their repercussions were about to turn our world upside down. The hurried pounding of our feet echoed against the cold, hard pavement, each step propelling us further into the unknown. Beneath the adrenaline, the weight of fear settled heavily upon my chest. The silhouette at the alley's entrance flickered ominously in the dim light. What had begun as a desperate search for my father was becoming a frantic escape from something darker. We can't let them catch us. I felt the urgency in my voice vibrate against the silence that embraced the world around us. Ben was a steady presence by my side, his hand gripped around mine like a lifeline amid the chaos. Each twist and turn we took pulled us deeper into shadow, spiraling away from the safety we once took for granted. Mr. Davidson turned sharply at a corner, leading us into a narrow passage obscured by discarded crates and thick vines. My breath caught as panic threatened to spiral out of control, pushing despair against the blank canvas of hope I had been trying to paint. Where is this safe place? I gasped, straining to keep my voice steady. There's a community center just ahead, he whispered, urgency chased by the echoes of our pursuers. It was abandoned, but I secured it. We can hide inside until the danger passes. As we broke through into a small courtyard, the scent of damp earth mingled with the remnants of faded paint and unkept grass. My pulse quickened as we reached the entrancea battered door, the familiar feel of additional weight pressing into my chest. It felt like stepping into a sanctuary of forgotten memories, but there was no time to linger on the past. Once inside, a flickering fluorescent light greeted us, illuminating the scattered remnants of a once vibrant hub for the community. "What do you know about my father?" I pressed, my voice shaking with unresolved questions. Mr. Davidson took a breath, his demeanor trembling between urgency and benevolence. "Your father was working on something important. A case against a powerful figure." He hesitated, the gravity of his next words hanging heavily, who would stop at nothing to silence him. The air felt charged with revelation, and it rushed at me like a crashing wave. "Is that why he disappeared?" My heart twisted painfully in my chest as the pieces began to collide. "He was trying to protect someone. Was it me? Not just you. It's complicated, Laura. There's a whole network involved, people who believe in what your father stood for." His gaze darted towards the door, the outer world still threatening uncertainty. "But we need to be careful, or we'll lose everything and everyone before it's too late. Then what do I do?" My voice cracked, vulnerability spilling into the crevices of my resolve. The thought of my father being silenced, of his struggle going unrecognized, felt like a knife carving deeply into my very essence. Ben's hand tightened around mine, grounding me amidst the turmoil. "We fight," he said, a fire igniting in his determination. "We don't have to face this alone." Just then, a shadow passed by the cracked window, sending a jolt of fear sprinting through my veins. "They're close," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "What if they find us here?" "Stay low," Mr. Davidson urged, his voice barely above a whisper as he pressed us toward a nearby storage closet. "We can't get caught. Not now. Not when we're so close." That we huddled inside the cramped space, darkness enveloping us while my mind raced with thoughts and fears. The uncertainty of what lay ahead gnawed at my gut, the weight of responsibility pressing heavier with every heartbeat. "I wish we had more time," I murmured, desperation creeping into my words. "I should have asked him more questions." "I should have. You're doing everything you can," Ben said softly, his breath mingling with mine in the small space. "There's still hope, Laura. The connection between you and your father runs deeper than you realize." Just then, a noise erupted outside, a voice clamoring and demanding. My pulse quickened again as I recognized it. "Mr. Davidson. I know you're in here. You can't hide forever." Fear wrapped its tendrils tightly around me. What do we do now? The thought of being trapped within the confines of our hiding spot felt suffocating, our world shrinking with every word spoken outside that door. "Just keep quiet," Mr. Davidson whispered, his face set with granite resolve. "As long as they don't know what we know, we have a chance." That I held my breath as the footsteps shuffled closer, shadows dancing around the warped doorframe. My heart sank as a revelation crashed like thunder over an otherwise silent sky. The truth was not only about my father, it was buried in the secrets of lives intertwined, and I realized then the very concept of justice was about to be redefined in a way I had never imagined. And just like that, as I clenched Ben's hand tight in the darkness, the world outside our closet erupted into chaos. The door burst open, and a figure filled the space, casting a long shadow over our simmering hope. In that instant, we were faced with the imminent truth: whoever stood outside knew more than we had realized, and the very future of my father's legacy now teetered on the brink of devastation. The door swung open with a resounding crash, and in that moment, time seemed to stretch like an elastic band ready to snap. The figure silhouetted in the doorway was unfamiliar yet exuded an ominous authority. My heart raced as reality seeped in the troubling uncertainty of who held the power and who was at risk redefined my very existence. "Mr. Davidson, I suggest you come out quietly," the voice commanded, unwavering and drenched in menace. "We know you've been hiding, Laura. You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be." I inhaled sharply, the very air thick with tension, my chest constricting against a tidal wave of terror. We were cornered, and the stakes had just multiplied. The thought of my father, a man I barely knew yet admired, fiercely threatened not just his safety but every trace of his fight for justice that now rested squarely on my shoulders. "I won't let you take them," Mr. Davidson yelled back, startling me from my spiraling thoughts. A protective wrath drenched his words, shrouding the fear slightly in the honor of resolve. Beneath the cracked floorboards, my fingers twitched nervously. It felt as though a fire had ignited behind my eyes, illuminating shadows that played tricks on my perception. "Let's not play games," the figure replied, stepping forward into the wavering light. It was then I recognized a sharp glint in the person's hand, a sleek metal baton, ready for intimidation. My stomach twisted into knots as dread permeated the air. "Wait!" I almost shouted, but Mr. Davidson laid a hand across my mouth, silencing the impulse. I could feel Ben's heart pounding beside me, a rhythmic echo of our shared anxiety. But hope flickered, momentarily igniting as someone slipped past the doorway just behind our antagonist. Another figure, smaller, with a defiant stance. With a gentle push, the newcomer surged through the door, placing themselves between the stranger and the larger shadow looming over us. "Get away from them." The voice was unsteady yet resolute. I couldn't see who it was, but their presence vibrated with a courage that felt electric. "Back off, kid!" The figure barked, their tone dripping with venom. "This is none of your business." A flash of recognition hit me. "Emma?" I whispered, the name slipping inadvertently from my lips, an anchor that pulled me closer to my reality. My best friend stood there, defiance etched across her features. How had she come to this place? This perilous moment seemed so far removed from the sunlight-filtered afternoons spent at school, weaving our dreams together. "Laura deserves to know the truth. You can't silence her," Emma exclaimed, standing her ground as though the universe relied on her bravery. And despite the looming peril, warmth washed over me, illuminating my sinking heart. I wasn't alone. "Run!" Mr. Davidson hissed, urging Ben and me toward the back of the closet, our escape route into uncharted darkness. We hesitated, the terror of all we faced creating weight that was difficult to shake. But a wave of urgency pushed me forward, breaking the spell of fear that froze us momentarily. Emma's words struck a deep chord within me, the truth. Wasn't that what we had been seeking all along? I had spent so long hiding beneath layers of uncertainty and confusion. Could this be the catalyst that propelled me forward? I turned to Mr. Davidson, desperation pooling in my eyes. What if we look for evidence? What if we confront whatever has been going on ourselves? My mind raced with unformulated plans, yet inside me swelled newfound courage. But before a response could be uttered, the tension in the room escalated. Ben's eyes widened, and I felt his grip tighten around my hand. The door he punctuated, nodding towards the way we had entered, the only line of escape we had. With my heart pounding like an engine in full throttle, I led the way out of the confined space, emerging right into the courtyard. But chaos erupted within seconds. The outside world was now a raging storm, filled with shouts and clashes resonating against the high walls. "Get them!" the shadowed figure roared, and I felt Ben tugged from my side as he lunged forward to shield me from the impending confrontation. "Go, Laura! Now!" His command echoed with a sense of urgency I could hardly process as I sprinted across the courtyard, confusion blurring my surroundings. My heart was beating so quickly it was almost hard to catch my breath, yet every step led me closer to a precipice I had never imagined. Just as I glanced back, I caught sight of Mr. Davidson falling to his knees, grappling with the figure. Nights of fear and worry spun into one cohesive truth. This wasn't just about my father's legacy anymore, it was about standing tall against a darkness determined to snuff out any flicker of hope. Surrounded by chaos, all I had left was a whisper. "I am my father's lawyer," I echoed softly into the wind, unsure of where the conviction came from, but knowing, with every fiber of my being, that I would not let his story be lost to silence. And then, clarity shattered the thick fog of despair. Beneath the escalating cries and clashing bodies, a piece of paper slipped from the corner of Mr. Davidson's pocket, fluttering down like a feather caught in the wind, hinting at a name. A name that might very well unravel everything, a connection that might turn the tide of justice into a weapon forged in truth. With tears threatening to spill, I hesitated only for a moment, then stepped forward, ready to take on the darkness. But before I could grasp the paper, a loud crash echoed through the air, resonating deeply within me. I turned, and just like that, everything fell into place, or perhaps apart. The suspense gripped me as I stared into Ben's panicked expression, the truth dawning on us both. "Laura! Look out!" he shouted as the weight of the world crashed upon us, spiraling the future into uncertainty once more, leaving only the questions that would haunt me. Even if I was my father's lawyer, was it enough to shield us from the impending storm? The aftermath of the chaos became a surreal blur, like a painting smeared with unexpected strokes. I felt an eerie silence descend upon the courtyard, interrupted only by the distant mingling of siren sounds of a world that persisted even as my own spiraled into confusion and fear. My heart drummed a frantic rhythm in my chest as I turned to gaze at the unfolding turmoil, the adrenaline streaming through my veins, a bitter reminder of how rapidly everything had shifted. But as focus returned, I realized that Mr. Davidson's battle had paused. The flickering light revealed a startling truth: he was gone. The confrontation had consumed him, consumed our chance for answers. Panic clawed at my throat, a desperate need to understand spiraling like a tempest within me. "We need to help him," I gasped, the words spilling from my lips before I could grasp the gravity of our circumstances. "No," Ben said, his voice gentle yet firm. His eyes, however, flickered with the same turmoil as melodies of our shared fears danced in the air. "We need to get out of here." I remained rooted in place, unwilling to turn from the very fabric of desperation that had enveloped us since we stepped into this nightmare. "No. What if he can still help? What if—" But Ben grasped my shoulder, a comforting anchor amid the chaos. "Look," he urged, his face taut with determination, "we can't risk losing ourselves, losing you, too. We have to find your father." My father. The thought hung in the balance, tethering me to the memories of his unwavering spirit, swirling within the ache of longing. I took a deep breath, forcing clarity through the chaos. I wasn't just fighting for him, I was fighting alongside him, wielding the very will that had been passed down through generations. And just like that, I found my resolve, the burning ember of determination igniting into a roaring fire. "You're right," I said, my voice steadier. "Let's regroup. We have to find the evidence, the truth that can change everything. I know my father's home has files we can still access. We can't back down." Just as I spoke, however, shadows loomed once more. The figure from before re-entered the frame, nostrils flared like a predator ready to pounce. "Going somewhere?" they taunted, eyes glinting with malevolent satisfaction. The weight of despair pressed against me, darkened deeper by the suffocating air that settled into the courtyard's corners. Emboldened by the sense of purpose rekindled within me, I squared my shoulders, refusing to yield to fear. "Who sent you?" I demanded, even as my heart pounded at the prospect of potential danger. The figure only chuckled, a sound void of warmth. "Does it matter? Your father had his time, and now it's yours to decide. But know this: truth is a dangerous game." "Not as dangerous as lies," I countered, each word resonating with an unexpected weight. "You're afraid of what we might uncover." The laughter echoed, even more chilling. "A brave little girl thinking she can play with forces beyond her understanding. You have no idea what you're in for." The moment hung heavy in the air, charged with a palpable tension echoing the very essence of our struggle. Yet, behind that fear, I finally understood I wasn't just here to reclaim my father's legacy. I was here to dismantle the lies built upon the backs of families like mine, families who had been silenced for too long. "Ben," I whispered, masks of fear slipping away, revealing the glimmer of resolve within me. "Let's find my father." With a shared glance of understanding, we darted back into the shadows, desperate to evade the tightening grasp of ominous forces. Every turn echoed whispers of possibilities, remnants of kinship that guided our journey. I could almost feel the sparks of defiance lighting the way from the labyrinth of despair. We wove through alleys and streets, each step taking us further beyond the torment that had lingered in our wake, and then, just as I rounded a corner, the world shifted. The old office building came into view, a structure both familiar and foreign, steeped in the weight of memories forged in battles long before my time. "Laura," Ben said, breaking into my reverie, his voice strained, pointed towards two silhouettes standing near the entrance. I squinted through the gathering dusk, as dread coiled tighter. "They're watching." Despite the fear ripping through me, the urgency of the mission blossomed anew. This was our moment. "We can't let them stop us," I affirmed, adrenaline surging. "Well, go through the back." But before we could slip away unnoticed, a voice thundered from behind me, sending a chill down my spine. "Going somewhere?" It was the figure from earlier, now closer, the shadows accompanying them extending like claws poised to strike. Panic molded into clarity as I caught sight of the second silhouette, a figure I recognized all too well. "Dad!" My voice spilled forth, a wave of emotion overwhelming me. I thought before I could finish, the world around me shattered. As I rushed towards him, I barely noticed the second figure stepping into the light, the one who had threatened to dismantle my reality. "What have you done?" Their voice was low, darkening the atmosphere. "You weren't supposed to know." But I didn't care. My father's eyes met mine with the weight of seasons. Each line on his face told a story of sacrifice, courage, and love. In that moment, everything settled into place, everything that had been stolen from us, everything that needed to be rekindled. And though I could sense the encroaching threat, I refused to succumb to the darkness. "Let's end this," I muttered, ignited with a purpose stronger than fear. "Let's unveil the truth." In unison, we stood side by side, a united front against an unseen enemy that had tried to compel our silence. The journey ahead was uncertain, vast and gleaming with peril, but with my father's fierce spirit converging with my own, I realized the battles were never fought alone. As the tension ramped up, the final confrontation loomed on the horizon, but I felt no Farronly fierce determination. After all, this was no longer just a battle for survival, it was a fight for vindication, love, and a legacy that could finally be freed from chains. With one resolute step forward, I whispered the words that had echoed through my heart, transcending time and circumstance: "I am my father's lawyer, and we will not be silenced." The truth glimmered ahead, calling us fiercely like a beacon in a storm, ready to reclaim what was rightfully ours. The journey beckoned with promises of both heartache and healing, but in the embrace of family, hope forged a new path, one that I would follow unflinchingly, no matter the cost. And together, we would rise to confront the darkness that threatened our world, determined to expose the truth that lay hidden beneath the weight of lies. It was time to reclaim our story as part of the very essence of who we were. As I took my father's hand, feeling the strength radiating between us, solid and unbreakable. With our fates intertwined, we stepped into the unknown, ready to confront the shadows. The truth awaited us, and it would be the light piercing through the darkness that would ultimately define our journey.